Fear is one of the most powerful forces in our lives. It can stop us in our tracks, keep us small, make us doubt ourselves, and prevent us from going after what we truly want, living a life fulfilled. But here's the thing. Fear is also a signal. It's a sign that you're standing on the edge of something big, something meaningful. And if you can learn to conquer it, to face it head on, you can start living boldly in a way that's true to who you really are, a way that's authentic. I want to share with you some actionable steps to help you conquer your fears and start living boldly and authentically. These are steps that I've used in my own life and with countless clients, people just like you, who felt the weight of fear holding them back, but decided to push through it, decided to do something about it, to no longer be defined by these ideas, by these forces. Step 1, acknowledge your fear. Now, this might sound simple, but it's one of the hardest things to do. We spend so much time trying to ignore our fears, to push them down, hoping they'll just go away. They don't. In fact, they often grow stronger the more we ignore them. So the first step is to bring your fear into the light. Acknowledge it. Name it. Understand that it's a part of you at this moment, but it doesn't have to define you. I remember a client I worked with once who had a deep fear of failure. This fear was so strong that it kept her from pursuing her dream of starting her own business. Every time she thought about it, that fear would just creep in, whispering in her ear that she wasn't good enough, that she would fail, or that something bad would happen. So we started by acknowledging that fear, by saying it out loud, by writing it down. And just that simple act of recognition was the beginning of her taking back control. Step 2, challenge your fear. That's right, challenge it. Challenge everything in life. But challenge that fear. You see, fear often thrives in the shadows, in the what ifs and the unknowns. But when you bring it out into the open, when you challenge it, you start to see it for what it really is, an illusion built on a bed of lies. Ask yourself, what's the worst that could happen? And then, can I handle that? You'll often find that the fear is much bigger in your mind than it is in reality. You know, one of the most powerful exercises I use is called fear setting. It's similar to goal setting, but instead you focus on your fears. You write down your fears. You imagine the worst case scenario. So in other words, you exploit it. And then you plan how you would handle it. What you'll discover is that you're far more capable of dealing with your fears than you ever realized. And once you know that, the fear loses its power. See, it only has power over you if you give your power to it. Step 3, take action. That's right. Even if it's small, fear wants to keep you stagnant. It wants to keep you stuck in place. It wants you to stay under its thumb. The antidote to fear is action. It doesn't have to be a big, bold move right away. Sometimes the smallest steps are the most powerful. What matters is that you're moving forward, that you're not letting fear dictate your life, that you are willing to stand up to it, no longer to run from it, be defined. You know, I remember a fear that comes to mind that there was a time in my life when fear was a constant companion. I lived in fear my whole life. It kept me from pursuing opportunities, from really stepping into my true potential. But I remember one day I decided I'd had enough. I was tired of being afraid. I took one small action, a phone call that I'd been avoiding for weeks. That call led me to a meeting, which led to a new opportunity, and eventually to a whole new chapter in my life. That small action was just a catalyst for a major change. But I had to take the action first. Step 4, reframe your fear. Instead of seeing fear as something to avoid, start seeing it as a guide. Fear shows up when you're about to do something important, something that matters. It's a sign that you're pushing your boundaries, that you're growing. So the next time you feel fear, instead of shrinking back and just, fearing it, lean into it. Ask yourself, what is this fear telling me? And then use that information to move forward. I remember a client who was terrified of public speaking, a very common fear I help people with. Every time she had to give a presentation, she would be filled with dread. But when we reframed that fear, she started to see it differently. Instead of a sign of some impending disaster, she began to see it as a sign that she was stepping into her power, that she was doing something that mattered. That shift in perspective made all the difference. Now, finally, step 5. Celebrate your wins. That's right. What you feed grows. Celebrate those wins. Every time you face a fear, no matter how small it is, take a moment to acknowledge it. Feed it. Let it energize you. Celebrate the fact that you took action, that you didn't let fear win. Now, these small victories, they add up, and over time, they create momentum. You start to see yourself as someone who can handle fear, someone who can act in spite of it, someone who's no longer defined by it. And that's when you start to live boldly. So, here's my challenge to you. What fear are you ready to conquer? What small action can you take today to start living boldly, to step into your authenticity, to step in your power? Remember, fear will always be a part of life, but it doesn't have to control you. You have the power to face it, to challenge it, and to rise above it. And your life is waiting. Don't let fear hold you back. Take those steps. Take action today. Reframe that fear and recognize that you have the power to overcome.